The day the envelope arrived at Margaret Chan's law office, she knew the Whitmore estate was going to be different. Not because of the size of the inheritance, though $3 million and a historic property in Connecticut was significant. It was the handwritten note, paper clipped to the will, 7 words in shaking script. They don't know about Rebecca. Tell them carefully. Margaret had been practicing estate law for 19 years. She'd seen families collapse over far less. But there was something in those 7 words that made her postpone the reading twice. She told herself it was scheduling conflicts. It wasn't. The Whitmore family thought they knew exactly how this was going to unfold. Edward Whitmore had died at 82 after a brief illness, leaving behind his second wife, Diane, 2 children from his first marriage, and a granddaughter he'd helped to raise. The house in Fairfield had been in the family for 4 generations. The investment accounts were substantial. Everything seemed straightforward. They were wrong. Let me take you back to the beginning. To understand what happened in that conference room 6 months after Edward's death, you need to understand the Whitmore family as they appeared before the reading. Before anyone knew the name, Rebecca Edward Whitmore had built a successful commercial real estate business in the 1980s and 90s. Not wealthy enough to make the Forbes list, but comfortable enough that money had stopped being a daily concern sometime around 2000. He'd married young, had 2 children with his first wife, Patricia, and divorced in 1994 after what everyone described as an amicable split. His son, Thomas, was 51 when Edward died. Thomas had worked in his father's business for nearly 30 years, eventually taking over day-to-day operations when Edward semi-retired at 70. Thomas had a careful, methodical personality. He kept spreadsheets of family birthdays. He never missed a mortgage payment. He'd assumed, reasonably, that the business and the house would pass primarily to him. Edward's daughter, Caroline, she'd gone a different direction, becoming a social worker and marrying a high school teacher named Mark. They had 1 daughter, Emma, who is now 23 and working as a graphic designer in Brooklyn. Caroline had always been clear that she didn't want or need a large inheritance. She'd told her father repeatedly that whatever he left should go to Thomas and Emma. She meant it. Then there was Diane, Edward's second wife. They'd married in 1997, when Diane was 39 and Edward was 57. The age gap had caused some family tension initially, but Diane had been a steady, caring presence during Edward's final 15 years. She worked as a nurse practitioner and had her own retirement accounts. She wasn't after Edward's money. Everyone knew that. On the surface, this was a family that communicated. They had Sunday dinners. They texted in a group chat. When Edward's health declined in his final months, they organized a rotation schedule for hospital visits. Thomas handled the medical decisions. Caroline managed the emotional support. Diane was there every day. There were small tensions. Of course, Emma, the granddaughter, had been unusually close to Edward. He'd helped pay for her college education and let her live in the basement apartment of the Fairfield house during her sophomore year when she'd struggled with dorm life. Sometimes Thomas felt the attention Edward gave Emma was disproportionate, but he never said anything. Emma was a good kid. The funeral in late October was dignified and well attended. Edward had been respected in the local business community. Thomas's wife, Jennifer, had made a few comments over the years about how much money Edward had spent renovating a bathroom at the Fairfield house for Diane's mother during her final year. Small things, quickly smoothed over. Caroline had once mentioned to her husband that she found it odd how often Edward visited his old office, even after officially retiring. But Edward was a man who loved routine. It didn't seem important. The reception afterward was held at the Fairfield house, and everyone remarked on how strong the family seemed, how united Your father would be proud of how you're all handling this. One of Edward's former business partners told Thomas Nohadid. He was already thinking about the estate. There would be taxes to manage, properties to evaluate, accounts to consolidate. He'd started a preliminary list. The will reading was scheduled for late April, 6 months after Edward's death. Margaret Chun sent a notice in mid-March. Everyone assumed the delay was standard legal procedure. It wasn't. Margaret had spent those 6 months trying to verify what Edward's note meant. She'd hired a private investigator. She'd tracked down birth certificates, adoption records, and bank statements, going back 35 years. She'd consulted with 2 other attorneys about her ethical obligations. Every new piece of information made the situation more complicated. The night before the reading, Margaret barely slept. She kept rehearsing different ways to deliver the news. There was no good way. They gathered in her office on a Thursday afternoon. The conference room had large windows overlooking the Hartford business district. Spring sunlight made everything seem falsely cheerful. Thomas arrived first, in a suit, carrying a leather folder. Caroline came next with Mark. Diane arrived alone, looking tired. Emma was the last to arrive, apologizing for traffic from Brooklyn. Margaret had arranged 5 chairs in a semicircle facing her desk. She'd placed bottles of water in front of each seat. She'd also placed a box of tissues on the side table. That should have been their first warning. She began with the standard legal language, the reading of the last will and testament of Edward James Whitmore. She confirmed everyone's identity. She explained the basic structure of the estate. Then she paused. Before we proceed with the specific distributions, there's something you need to understand about the context of this will. Your father and Diane, your husband, made this decision deliberately and with full legal capacity. He was very specific about his intentions. Thomas shifted in his chair. Is there a problem with the business? No, Margaret said. The business is fine. This is about something else, something your father didn't share with you during his lifetime. Caroline felt her stomach tighten. What kind of something? Margaret opened a manila folder. Inside was a photograph. She turned it so they could see. A young woman, maybe 27 or 28, with dark hair and Edward's distinctive white-set eyes. She was smiling at the camera, standing in front of what looked like a college building. This is Rebecca Whitmore, Margaret sighed, your half-sister. The conference room went completely silent. Not the silence of people processing information, the silence of people whose reality had just tilted sideways. Thomas spoke first. That's not possible. I'm afraid it is, Margaret sighed. Rebecca was born in 1992 in Portland, Oregon. Her mother's name was Lynn Harrington. She passed away in 2019. Edward is listed as the father on Rebecca's birth certificate. He provided financial support consistently from her birth until his death. Carolyn's voice came out as a whisper. 1992. He was still married to my mother. Yes. If stories like this interest you, subscribing means you won't miss what happens next. Diane's face had gone pale. Did you know about this? Caroline asked her. No. Diane's voice was steady but strained. He never mentioned her, not once. Emma was staring at the photograph. Where is she now? She lives in Seattle, Margaret said. She's a software engineer, married, no children. She's been informed of your father's death and the existence of this will. She's chosen not to attend this reading, but she's available for contact if any of you wish to reach out. Thomas stood up abruptly, walked to the window, then sat back down. How much? I'm sorry. How much of the estate goes to her? Margaret took a breath. Before I answer that, you need to understand the full scope of what your father arranged. This isn't just about the will. It's about decisions he made over 33 years. She pulled out another document. Bank statements. Transfer records. Edward maintained a separate account at a bank in Boston. From that account, he sent monthly payments to Lynn Harrington from 1992 until her death. After Lynn died, the payments continued to Rebecca. Over 33 years, those payments total approximately $800,000. $800,000. Thomas repeated the number like he was testing its reality. Additionally, Edward purchased a condominium in Seattle in 2005. The deed lists Rebecca as the owner, but Edward maintained the mortgage payments until it was paid off in 2018. Current value is approximately $600,000. Caroline had started crying silently. Mark had his arm around her shoulders. In the will itself, Margaret continued, Edward leaves Rebecca $1 million in liquid assets. The Fairfield house and the business are divided between Thomas and Caroline as expected. Diane receives the other house, the one in Vermont, plus Edward's retirement accounts. Emma receives $200,000 for graduate school or a down payment on a home. Thomas was doing math in his head. So Rebecca gets nearly $2.5 million total over the years, almost as much as the rest of the estate combined. If you calculate it that way, yes. Why? Emma's voice cracked. Why would he hide her? Why wouldn't he tell us? Margaret had asked herself the same question hundreds of times. Your father left a letter. He asked that I read it after explaining the basic facts. Would you like me to continue? No one objected. No one seemed capable of speech. Margaret unfolded a letter written in Edward's distinctive slanted handwriting. It was dated 3 weeks before his death. She read, "To my family. By now you know about Rebecca. I expect you're angry. You have a right to be. But before you judge me too harshly, let me explain what happened and why I made the choices I did. In 1991, I was struggling in my marriage to Patricia. We weren't fighting. We were just absent from each other's lives. I was traveling constantly for business. Patricia was focused on new kids and her volunteer work. We were roommates pretending to be partners. I met Lynn at a conference in Portland. She was young, brilliant, full of energy. We had an affair. It lasted for months. When she told me she was pregnant, she made it clear she didn't want to break up my marriage. She didn't want money beyond what was fair for child support. She wanted to raise the baby on her own terms. I should have been honest with all of you then. I should have told Patricia, divorced properly, and integrated Rebecca into our family from the beginning. But I was a coward. I was terrified of losing my children, terrified of the judgment. So I sent money, visited Portland twice a year under the guise of business trips, and maintained 2 separate lives. When Patricia and I divorced in 1994, it wasn't because of Lynn. Patricia never knew. We divorced because we'd grown into strangers. Even then, I didn't tell you about Rebecca. She was 2 years old. I convinced myself that revealing her existence would only hurt everyone. Over the years, I got to know Rebecca. She's remarkable, brilliant, kind, independent. She grew up knowing I was her father, but understanding I had another family. Lynn raised her to be gracious about a situation that was fundamentally unfair to her. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for understanding. And I'm asking that you not punish Rebecca for my failures. She didn't ask for any of this. Margaret finished reading. The silence that followed was different now. Heavier. "There's one more thing," Margaret said quietly. "Rebecca sent a message for you. She asked me to share it if I thought appropriate. I think now is appropriate." She pulled out a printed email. "To the Whitmore family. I know this is a shock. It was a shock to me too when I first learned I had I want you to know I never asked my father for anything beyond the basic support any parent should provide. I never wanted to disrupt your lives. I'm including my contact information below. If any of you want to reach out, I'm open to that. If you don't, I understand. I won't pursue anything beyond what's outlined in the will. I'm sorry for the pain this revelation causes. Rebecca." Caroline was the first to stand. She walked out of the conference room without a word. Mark followed her. Emma sat frozen, staring at the photograph of Rebecca. Thomas remained seated, his jaw tight. "Did Diane know?" he asked again. Margaret looked at Diane. "Would you like to answer that?" "I didn't know about Rebecca," Diane said. Her voice was controlled, but trembling slightly. "But I knew something was wrong. About 6 months before Edward died, he started having these episodes. Not medical, emotional. He'd get quiet and distant. One night he told me he'd made mistakes in his life he couldn't fix. I thought he was talking about business decisions. Or his first marriage. I never imagined." "Did he tell you before he died?" Thomas asked. "No. He died before he could, or maybe he decided not to." The legal distribution timeline gives you 60 days before any transfers need to occur. If you have questions or want to discuss anything, my office is available. Thomas left without looking at anyone. Emma remained in her chair. She asked, pointing to Rebecca's photograph. "Yes," Margaret said. Emma took the photos and walked out slowly, like someone leaving a funeral. Only Diane remained. "I've been married to him for 27 years, and apparently I didn't know him at all." Thomas finally stood. "I need to think about this. I need time." "Of course," Margaret said. She sat in the empty conference room, staring at the bank statements spread across Margaret's desk. "He visited Portland twice a year," Diane said quietly. "He told me they were regional business conferences. I never questioned it. Why would I?" Margaret had no answer for that. That evening, Thomas sat in his home office, going through every financial record he had from his father's business. Jennifer brought him coffee and asked if he wanted to talk. Said? No. What he wanted was to find something, anything, that made sense. The separate bank account in Boston bothered him most. Not just that it existed, but that Edward had been meticulous about hiding it. The statements Margaret had shown them listed the account under Edward's middle name and Lynn's last name. Edward James Harrington, as if he'd created an entirely separate identity. Thomas found himself calculating 800,000 over 33 years. That was about 24,000 per year. 2,000 per month. More than child support. More than obligation. That was someone trying to be a father from a distance. The realization made him angry in a way he hadn't expected. Caroline didn't go home. She drove to the Fairfield house instead, letting herself in with the key she'd kept since childhood. The house still smelled like Edward's coffee. Diane hadn't changed anything since his death. She walked through the room slowly, seeing everything differently now. The study where Edward had spent hours on video calls. supposedly with business partners. The desk drawer where he'd kept his travel itineraries. The photo wall in the hallway showing family moments across decades. Thomas and Caroline and Emma smiling at various ages. Rebecca wasn't in any of them. Rebecca had never existed in this house. Caroline found herself in the basement, in the apartment where Emma had lived during college. Edward had renovated this space himself, insisting on specific details. A good desk near the window. Bookshelves along one wall. At the time, Caroline had thought he was just being a devoted grandfather. Now she wondered if he'd been thinking of Rebecca. If every time he helped Emma, he was trying to compensate for the daughter he couldn't openly acknowledge. Emma arrived home in Brooklyn after midnight. Her roommate was asleep. She sat on her bed with Rebecca's photograph, studying the face. The resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same slight asymmetry in the smile. This was her aunt, a whole person who'd existed in parallel to Emma's life. Unknown. Emma opened her laptop and did what any 23-year-old would do. She searched for Rebecca on social media. Rebecca's LinkedIn profile showed an impressive career trajectory. Computer science degree from UCLA, master's from Stanford, current position as a senior software engineer at a prominent tech company. Her profile photo showed the same woman from Margaret's picture, a few years older, confident and professional. Emma found Rebecca's Instagram next. It was mostly private, but a few public photos showed Rebecca hiking, attending tech conferences, with her husband at what looked like a wedding. Normal life moments, nothing that suggested drama or secrets. Emma sent a friend request. Then she immediately regretted it and tried to cancel it. But Instagram doesn't let you unsend friend requests. She lay awake for hours, phone in, and waiting to see if Rebecca would respond. The next morning, Thomas called an emergency meeting with his lawyer, not Margaret, his own attorney who handled his personal affairs. He wanted to know if there was any way to contest the will. His lawyer, Donald Price, listened to the full story and then gave Thomas the answer he didn't want to hear. The will is airtight. Edward had full mental capacity when he wrote it. The financial distributions are clearly stated. Rebecca is legally his daughter. There's no grounds for contests. What about the money he gave her over the years? Can we argue he diminished the estate? No. Those were gifts made during his lifetime. He had every legal right to do that with his own money. Thomas leaned back in his chair. So she just gets away with it. Gets away with what? Being born. The question hung in the air. Thomas didn't have an answer. I understand you're hurt, Donald said. But from a legal standpoint, your father did exactly what he was entitled to do. If you want my advice, accept the inheritance as structured and move forward. Fighting this will only cost you money and time you'll never get back. Thomas left the meeting more frustrated than when he arrived. That afternoon, Carolyn called Thomas. We need to talk about this as a family. I don't know what there is to talk about. Thomas, we have a sister. That's what there is to talk about. We have a father who lied to us for 33 years. Both things can be true. They agreed to meet Sunday at Caroline's house. Diane would come. Emma would drive up from Brooklyn. They'd try to process this together. But that night, something else happened. Emma's phone buzzed. Instagram notification. Rebecca had accepted her friend request and sent a message. Hi, Emma. I saw your requests. I wasn't sure if you'd want to connect. I know the situation is complicated. If you want to talk, I'm here. If you need time, I understand completely. Rebecca. Emma stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. Hi. I don't really know what to say. This is all very new, but I think I'd like to talk eventually. Maybe not today, but soon. Rebecca's response came quickly. Whenever you're ready. I'm not going anywhere. Sunday arrived cold and rainy. Caroline had made coffee and put out pastries no one touched. Thomas arrived first, looking exhausted. Diane came next, and Emma last. They sat in Caroline's living room in a rough circle, nobody quite sure how to begin. Caroline started. I think we need to acknowledge what we're all feeling before we can decide how to move forward. I'll go first then, Thomas said. I'm angry. I'm angry at Dad for lying. I'm angry that he created this entire separate life. I'm angry that he thought we couldn't handle the truth. And I'm angry that Rebecca existed all this time and we didn't know. Are you angry at Rebecca specifically? Caroline asked. Thomas hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. She benefited from his secrecy. She also grew up without a father present, Emma said quietly. We had him. She got money and twice early visits. She got $2.5 million. Emma, over 33 years. We got a family. The comment landed hard. Thomas looked away. Diane spoke next. I feel betrayed. Not by Rebecca, by Edward. I spent 27 years married to him. I nursed him through his final illness. He had months to tell me the truth, and he chose not to. That makes me question everything about our marriage. Do you think he loved you? Caroline asked gently. I think he loved me and lied to me. Both things were true. Diane's voice cracked slightly. I keep wondering what else he didn't tell me. I've been thinking about that too. Caroline sighed. What else don't we know? Was Rebecca the only secret? Were there others? Margaret said she verified everything, Emma said. Rebecca is the only child outside the marriage. That we know of, Thomas muttered. Thomas, stop. Caroline's voice was sharp. This isn't helping. What would help, Caroline? Should we all just pretend this is fine? Should we invite Rebecca to Thanksgiving and act like we're one big happy family? Maybe we should. The room went quiet. You can't be serious, Thomas said. Why not? She's our sister. Half-sister. But still, she didn't do anything wrong. She took $2.5 million that should have been split among us. No, Caroline said firmly. She took money that Dad chose to give her. There's a difference. Emma cleared her throat. I messaged her. On Instagram, everyone turned to look at her. When? Thomas demanded. Friday night. She responded. We've been talking a little bit. Just getting to know each other. You've been talking to her? Thomas stood up. Without discussing it with us first. She's my aunt. Thomas, I don't need permission to talk to my aunt. She's a stranger who's trying to insert herself into this family. No, Emma said, her voice getting stronger. She's someone who's been excluded from this family her entire life. There's a difference. Thomas looked at Carolyn, then Diane, then back at Emma. I can't do this right now. He walked out, letting the door slam behind him. The three women sat in silence for a moment. He'll come around. Caroline sighed, though she didn't sound certain. Will he? Diane asked. I've known Thomas for 27 years. When he decides something is wrong, he doesn't let it go. Emma pulled out her phone and showed them her message thread with Rebecca. Not the content, just the fact that it existed. She seems nice, normal. She's not trying to cause problems. What does she want? Caroline asked. I think she just wants to exist. to not be a secret anymore. That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He got up at 3 in the morning and drove to the Fairfield house. He still had keys. Diana told him to feel free to visit any time before they formally transferred the property. He let himself in and went straight to Edward's study. He'd been through the obvious documents during the estate inventory, but he hadn't looked carefully. Now he wanted to find something. Evidence of the double life. Proof of the lies. He spent 2 hours going through filing cabinets, desk drawers, boxers in the closet. He found the business records he expected, tax returns, property deeds. Investment statements, nothing unusual. Then he found a small wooden box tucked behind a row of books on the top shelf. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. Inside were letters, dozens of them, spanning decades. From Lynn to Edward. From Rebecca to Edward. Birthday cards, Father's Day cards, crayon drawings from when Rebecca was young. Thomas sat on the floor and read them all. Lynn's early letters were updates about Rebecca's development. Requests for specific financial assistance. Thank you notes for gifts. But as years passed, the tone changed. The letters became more personal. Lynn wrote about her own struggles as a single mother, her pride in Rebecca's achievements, her gratitude for Edward's consistency, even if he couldn't be fully present. One letter from 2006 stood out. Rebecca asked again why her father doesn't live with us. I told her the same thing I always do, that you have another family that needs you too. She's getting old enough to understand the situation isn't fair, but she doesn't blame you. She's more mature than either of us at 14. I hope someday you can meet her openly, as yourself, not as the nice man who visits twice a year. She deserves that. You would too. Rebecca's letters were different. Childhood drawings and misspelled thank you notes evolved into articulate updates about school, college applications, career decisions. The tone was always respectful but distant. She called him Edward, not Dad. A letter from 2018, after Rebecca graduated from Stanford. Thank you for the graduation gift. I know you couldn't attend the ceremony. I understand why. I've always understood. But I want you to know that understanding doesn't make it easier. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I wish you could have been there to see it in person, without pretense. Maybe someday things will be different. Rebecca. Thomas sat surrounded by 30 years of correspondence between his father and a daughter he'd never met. The anger he'd been carrying started to shift into something more complicated. His father hadn't been a villain. He'd been a coward who kept trying, in his limited way, to be present for a child he couldn't publicly acknowledge. That didn't make it right, but it made it human. Thomas carefully put the letters back in the box and left the house as dawn was breaking. The following week, Margaret Chun received a call from Thomas requesting another meeting. She assumed it was about legal challenges to the will. She was wrong. I want to contact Rebecca, Thomas said. I want to know how to reach her directly. Margaret was careful not to show surprise. I can provide our contact information. May I ask what prompted this decision? I found letters between her and my father. I think I need to hear her side of the story before I decide how I feel about all of this. Margaret wrote down Rebecca's email address and phone number. For what it's worth, Thomas, I think this is the right choice. Rebecca has been remarkably gracious about this entire situation. Has she contacted you since the will reading? Once, to confirm she understood the distribution timeline, and to ask if your family wanted any kind of mediation. I told her you'd asked for time. Thomas nodded slowly. What's she like? You've spoken to her. Professional. Intelligent. Careful with her words. She seems to have inherited your father's analytical mind. That's what I'm afraid of, Thomas said quietly. That evening, Thomas wrote an email to Rebecca. He deleted it and rewrote it 4 times. Finally, he sent something simple. Rebecca, this is Thomas Whitmore. I'm not sure what to say or how to begin this conversation. I found letters between you and our father. I have questions. I imagine you do too. Would you be willing to talk? Maybe by phone, Thomas. Rebecca responded the next morning. Thomas, I'm glad you reached out. Yes, I'm willing to talk. How about Saturday afternoon? I'll send my number. Rebecca. Saturday afternoon. Thomas sat in his car in his driveway for 10 minutes before dialing. Rebecca picked up on the second ring. Hello? Hi, it's Thomas. Hi. Her voice was measured, neutral. Thanks for calling. I don't really know where to start, Thomas admitted. Neither do I. This isn't exactly a situation with a handbook. No. Thomas paused. Can I ask you something directly? Of course. Did you know about us? Growing up, yes. My mother told me when I was 6. She said I had a father who lived far away and had another family. I didn't fully understand what that meant until I was older. When did you meet him? Edward. He visited twice a year, from as early as I can remember. When I was little, Mom would tell me a friend of the family was coming to visit. As I got older, she told me the truth, that he was my father, but couldn't be part of my daily life. What was he like when he visited? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Kind. Awkward. He'd take me to museums or bookstores. We'd walk around and he'd ask me questions about school. It always felt like he was trying very hard, but didn't quite know how to be a dad in 2-day increments. Did you ever ask to meet us? Your half-siblings? When I was 12, I asked if I could meet my brother and sister. He said it wasn't possible. I asked again when I was 16. Same answer. Eventually, I stopped asking. Thomas felt something twist in his chest. I'm sorry. For what? For existing in a way that made it impossible for you to be acknowledged. I don't know. I'm sorry. Rebecca took a long breath. Sometimes, when I was younger, it wasn't really resentment, more like sadness. I'd see father-daughter moments in movies and think about how mine had to be hidden. But my mom was good. She made sure I understood it wasn't your fault. Your mom sounds like a remarkable person. She was. Rebecca's voice softened. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. Edward came to the funeral. It was the first time I saw him cry. I didn't know that. Neither did Caroline or Emma. This was a decision our father made. Did you resent us? There's a lot we don't know about each other. They talked for 90 minutes about their careers, their lives, their completely different childhoods, with the same father as a distant figure. By the end, Thomas found himself laughing at a story Rebecca told about. Edward accidentally attending her 8th grade science fair dressed in a business suit while every other parent was in casual clothes. He stood out like he was attending a board meeting. Rebecca said. I was mortified at the time. Now it's just funny. When they finally hung up, Thomas sat in his car feeling something he hadn't expected. Not anger, not resentment, something closer to grief for the family they could have been. He called Carolyn. I talked to Rebecca. And I think we should meet her, all of us. Caroline was quiet for a long moment. Really? 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 She's family. Caroline. Dad made it complicated, but she's family. 3 weeks later, they gathered at a neutral location, a restaurant in New Haven, halfway between Fairfield and where Rebecca was staying with a college friend. Thomas came with Jennifer. Caroline brought Mark. Emma came alone. Diane declined to attend, but sent her regards. Rebecca arrived exactly on time, dressed simply, looking calm, but Thomas could see her hands trembling slightly as she approached the table. The first few minutes were awkward. Handshakes, polite greetings, the strange dance of people who are related by blood but complete strangers in every other way. Emma broke the ice. I've been looking at your Instagram. Your hiking photos are beautiful. Thank you. The Pacific Northwest has some incredible trails. Emma's been wanting to visit Seattle, Carolyn added. Maybe you could show her around sometime. I'd like that. They ordered food and the conversation gradually became more natural. Rebecca asked about the family business. Thomas asked about her work in tech. Caroline wanted to know about Rebecca's husband, Daniel. He's the steady one, Rebecca said with a slight smile. When I found out about the will and everything that was going to come out, he's the one who convinced me to reach out rather than disappear. I almost didn't respond to Margaret Chun's first email. Why not? Thomas asked. Because I didn't want to cause you pain. I've lived with the knowledge of your existence my whole life. You'd lived without knowing about me. I thought maybe it would be kinder to just take the inheritance quietly and never make contact. I'm glad you didn't do that, Emma said. Are you? Rebecca looked at her. It's turned your family upside down. Our family was built on a lie, Carolyn said gently. You didn't create that. You were just the truth that finally came out. Rebecca's eyes got wet. I spent so long thinking I was the problem. The shameful secret. Hearing you say that means more than you know. They talked for 3 hours about Edward, about their different memories of him, about what happens next. It wasn't comfortable. There were long pauses, moments where no one knew what to say, but it was real. As they were leaving, Thomas pulled Rebecca aside. I'm sorry I was angry at first. I needed someone to blame and you were there. I understand. I don't think you do. Thomas looked at her directly. I spent my whole life as Edward Whitmore's son. I built my identity around that relationship, finding out he was someone else's father too. Someone he kept secret. It made me question everything I thought I knew. And now I think he was a complicated man who made a terrible choice. He spent 30 years trying to make it right, in the only way he knew how. That doesn't excuse it, but it makes him human. He loved you, Rebecca said quietly. He talked about you and Caroline constantly during his visits. I heard about your business achievements, Caroline's work, helping people, Emma's artwork. I knew so much about your lives, while you knew nothing about mine. That must have been strange. It was lonely, Rebecca admitted, like being a ghost watching a family through a window. Thomas didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, and they stood there in the parking lot in silence for a moment before saying goodbye. Over the next few months, the Whitmore family slowly reorganized itself around this new reality. Emma and Rebecca started texting regularly. Caroline invited Rebecca to a family dinner, though Rebecca politely declined, saying it was too soon. Thomas and Rebecca had several more phone conversations, gradually building something that resembled a sibling relationship. Diane struggled the most. She'd loved Edward completely, believed their marriage was built on honesty. Learning she'd been wrong about something so fundamental broke something in her. She sold the Vermont house and moved to Arizona to be near his sister. Before she left, she met Rebecca once, briefly, at a coffee shop. "I'm not angry at you," Diane told her, "but I can't be around the reminder of what I didn't know. I hope you understand." "I do," Rebecca said. "I'm sorry for the pain this caused you. It's not your fault, but that doesn't make it easier." They parted cordially, but both knew they wouldn't speak again. The legal distribution of Edward's estate proceeded as outlined. The Fairfield house was sold, with proceeds split between Thomas and Caroline. The business transitioned fully to Thomas's ownership. Rebecca received her $1 million inheritance. Emma got her education fund. But something else happened that Margaret Chun hadn't predicted. Emma approached Rebecca with a proposal. "I want to write a book about this, about inherited secrets and family lies. Would you be willing to share your story?" Rebecca considered it for a long time. "Only if we tell the whole truth. Not a sanitized version. The real version. That's what I want to." They spent 6 months interviewing family members, going through documents, constructing the narrative of a family fractured by secrecy. Caroline contributed. Thomas added his perspective reluctantly. Even Diane, from Arizona, participated in one long phone interview. The book was never published. Halfway through writing it, Emma realized that some truths are meant to be private. She gave copies of the manuscript to Rebecca, Thomas, and Caroline, and they agreed to keep it within the family. But the process of creating it, of examining the story from every angle, helped them all make sense of what happened. 2 years after Edward's death, Thomas called Rebecca with an unexpected question. "We're having a memorial at the Fairfield house location. Well, where it used to be. The new owners are letting us hold something on the grounds. Would you want to come?" Would I be welcome? Yes. Rebecca flew across the country for the memorial. She met Emma in person for the first time since the restaurant. She saw Caroline again, Mark, Jennifer, Thomas's children, who are young adults now and fascinated by their newly discovered aunt. They stood together on the property where Edward had raised one family while financially supporting another. They shared memories, some overlapping, some entirely separate. Thomas told a story about Edward teaching him to drive. Rebecca told a story about Edward taking her to her first college visit. At the end, Caroline raised a glass to Edward, who loved imperfectly but persistently, who made terrible choices and spent decades trying to compensate, who left us with each other, which might have been the best inheritance of all. They drank to that, but the truth is messier than any toast can capture. The Whitmore family didn't heal completely. Thomas and Rebecca maintained a cordial relationship but never became close. Emma and Rebecca developed a genuine friendship. Caroline occupied a middle ground, accepting Rebecca's family while acknowledging the complexity. The inheritance itself became secondary. Yes, Rebecca received substantial assets. Yes, it changed her financial situation. But what she'd actually inherited was more complicated. A family that half accepted her, memories of a father who'd loved her from a distance, and the burden of knowing she'd been someone's secret for 3 decades. What Thomas inherited was the knowledge that his father had been capable of sustained deception. What Caroline inherited was the understanding that family is more fragile than it appears. What Emma inherited was a sense that truth, however painful, is better than comfortable lies. And what Diane inherited was the question that would haunt her for the rest of her life. What else hadn't she known? 3 years after Edward's death, Margaret June received a letter from Rebecca. It was a thank you note for handling the estate with sensitivity, but it included a passage Margaret kept in her desk drawer. People think inheritance is about money and property. They're wrong. Inheritance is what you're left carrying after someone dies. Some people inherit houses. I inherited the knowledge that I was loved but not claimed, that I was provided for but not acknowledged, that I mattered enough to support financially but not enough to introduce to the world. I don't know if that's better or worse than inheriting nothing at all. I'm still figuring it out. Margaret thought about that passage often in the years that followed, about how Edward Whitmore's will had distributed assets according to law, but the true inheritance, the emotional legacy, couldn't be quantified or divided. It could only be carried differently by each person for the rest of their lives. The Whitmore case taught her something she hadn't learned in 19 years of estate law. The reading of a will isn't an ending. It's the moment when one story stops and several others begin. Each person walking away with their own version of what they've inherited, what they've lost, and what truth actually cost. Some families protect secrets for generations. The Whitmores protected theirs for 33 years. The inheritance brought it into daylight. But daylight doesn't heal everything. Sometimes it just illuminates the cracks that were always there, invisible in the dark, impossible to ignore once exposed. And that's the inheritance no one wants, but everyone receives eventually. The knowledge that the people we love are capable of living multiple truths simultaneously, and we may never know which version we actually knew.